It's that time of year for a lot of us when the gardens are getting heavy, and I know that sounds weird, but give me just a minute to explain. Now for this one, we're going to get even more specific and say especially your peppers. They've been growing all year long, they're setting on fruit, sometimes giant fruit, and that plant is getting weighed down. And if you haven't stayed on top of it, plant staking is a must. We all get behind. It's okay. Our gardens get to going crazy and we just can't keep up with it. But when we hit this time of year and your fruits are getting gigantic, how do you support them? Because if you don't support them, you very well might lose them. They can actually snap the branches and you lose your fruit altogether. So as a lot of you probably know out there, there's plenty of ways to stake peppers. And a lot of it depends on what type of pepper it is. You'll hear a lot of people talking about all the different species of peppers. But I'm going to tell you the way I do it, or at least the way I categorize it in my mind that makes it very simple, is you have your chinense, which is your super hots. You have your chinense species, and you have all the rest. Chinense has the ability to get really big. Now that's not to say the other plants don't, but the chinense specifically are known for getting really large. Even the Carolina Reapers that I have around me right here, I mean, they're at waist height right now. They'll probably end up chest height on me, and I'm 6 foot tall. So what's the best way to support them so you don't hurt and you don't lose your plant? Let's take a look. Here we have a Hungarian wax. Actually, I was going to say pepper, but a whole bed. A horse trough full of Hungarian waxes. There's 6 plants in here. So it's huge, and that actually works really well because you can help brace them against each other. Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure Hungarian wax is part of the Capsicum annuum species. Again, don't quote me. I don't have my phone on me. I'm not looking it up. I'm just going off memory. They can still get very large, but if you look, the way I do most of them is I just have one stem. I use one post right up the center, and I just keep strapping the center stem all the way up like single stemming on a tomato. Now you're going to get some heavy branches and you might have to modify and put some things in there to hold those up. So for the most part, if you stay on top of picking the fruit, the plant's not going to get too heavy. And if you give it plenty of fertilizer and you really take care of it through the season, it's going to be strong enough to support that fruit anyway. So number one is just a stake right down the middle. Now this is where I'm talking about the Capsicum chinense versus everything else. Other methods that we talk about can be used on all the other species, but for most of them, for me, I just do the stake up the middle and strap it that way. Now, what stakes or poles do we use? Because these little green ones here that you buy at Walmart or the tractor store or anything like that, they can get expensive when you got a big garden. There is absolutely nothing wrong with just using branches and sticks that you have laying around the yard. And you know me, I'm a big opportunity gardener. So if I see it laying around, it could be sticks, it could be branches, I'll use it. Anything to save money, because the larger your garden gets, you're going to spend a ton of money if you're not careful. So what's the best way to do a center stake that I have found, and might be one of the best tips in the garden that I could ever give you? Especially if you have a table saw, you have tools around the house, you're handy with that kind of stuff. Cedar fence pickets. I've been using cedar fence pickets for a long time, and they're typically about 5.5 inches wide. You can get them at Home Depot, Lowe's, any place like that, and they're usually $3 to $4. They're cedar, so they're weather resistant. Now, are they going to last as long as those green poles? Probably not. But this year you could insert them this way, flip them over next year, put the other end into the wet dirt, so that way it doesn't rot off as fast. They're also 6 foot long, and you don't always need 6 foot. For bell peppers, things like that, 3 foot might be fine, so you could cut them in half and get even more. And then the great thing is, because they're 5.5 to 5 3/4, depending, you can usually go about 1 3/4 inch strips. Sometimes I go down to 1.5, and I just set my table saw and I run it through long ways, and here's what I end up with. Great sturdy stakes for the garden And at $3 or $4, we'll take it on the high side. You're talking about $1 to like $1.50 for every 6-foot pole. Trust me, it works. Give it a try. But if you've tried it and don't like it, leave me a comment down below. Let me know how it worked for you. While we're on that subject, if you haven't yet, do me a favor and give me a like. If you like what you're seeing and you're not subscribed, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button too, because it helps me out a ton. And I'm trying like crazy to grow this channel. But the way I really like to do it is grow your sunflowers one year to use the sunflower stalks for steaks the next year. I mean, they're unbelievably tough. You already grew the sunflowers anyway, you just dried them out, and I mean, they are strong. If you grow those mammoth ones with the giant stems like these, they can get 10 foot tall. And trust me, more than enough support. Plus, the very bottom end is all gnarled up, so it kind of grabs when you get it down deep in that soil. And another cool part is you can cut it in half too. Take a look. There's what it looks like utilized in the garden. Now these are bell peppers. And then of course they have your bamboo poles, and there's plenty of other ways to do it. That's just what works for me, and it's cheap, so I think it'll work for you. So although the center stake works really good on most plants, something that you can also use in conjunction with the center stake, because when the plant's really little, the center stake works really good, but then as it starts to get big, it might bush way out, is the tomato cage, or what they should have called it, the pepper cage. So I do in fact use a lot of tomato cages, and I think we should start a petition to change the name and call them pepper cages. Although they do work for tomatoes, especially when we get to talking quality, and I'll show you the difference. A tomato cage works best for peppers, and it works for about all peppers. The only time that it really doesn't work so well is in that very early beginning stages when the plant's really small. The wind can blow it side to side, and you've still got this big ring down here that's sitting out away from the plant, so it makes the plant move. That's why I say you could either use one of the green poles in the very beginning and strap that little plant to it, and then once it gets bigger, put the big tomato cage over it, and it supports it side to side. That is definitely one of my preferred ways. So for instance, I grow a lot of Carolina Reapers. Carolina Reapers is part of the Chinense species, but they grow in pots. Mine grow 4 or 5 feet, tall. In the ground, they stay really short. So the tomato cages do work for them, but they get overloaded with fruit. And if you use a tomato cage, there's a good chance at the end of season, when it's fully bushed out and there's fruit everywhere, that it's going to topple that tomato cage. Here we have one of my Carolina Reapers in a tomato cage. And you can see now we're at the end of August. I still have another month and a half of this thing growing, and it's made it above the second ring of the large tomato cage, but there's plenty of support there. And you can look right down the row and see that I do all my Carolina Reapers that way. But take my word for it, all tomato cages are not created equal. In this case, it is definitely worth it to spend a little bit of extra money and buy a nice tomato cage. It'll probably last you a lifetime, and if you can swing it, buy the square tomato cages. For me, I love the square tomato cages, and that's what's on the giant San Marzano tomato plants that I've showed you in all my videos. But if you get a good one, you're not able to just bend it up here on top. The cheap ones, however, can. Even though this is a tomato, this was one of those afterthought plants. Trust me, if you haven't hit that part of gardening yet, that toward the end of season you're trying to get any little plant you still have out into pots, this was one of them. And this was just something I still had laying around, and you can see how easy I can just bend this, and it doesn't honestly hold well. I baby it, and we put up with it because I had it laying around. But you can see that when it comes to Carolina Reapers or Primatalis or anything like that, I definitely use the tomato cages, and they work really well. And yeah, one reason is those particular plants have very strong stems. Now you have to baby them through the first couple months. If you haven't grown a Chinense species, a super hot, they do start off with that very rubbery stem. But if you take care of them and you fertilize them right, they get a tree trunk, and it is enough to support that plant for the most part. The tomato cage is just giving it some guidance. But what happens if you want to grow a giant pepper? That's where you need a cage. So if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. This is my first year using the cage, which after watching one of the YouTubers that I watch, I finally decided to give it a try. It's also my first year trying to grow a giant pepper plant. I've seen reviews of people who like and don't like cages. It's my first year doing it, and so far I really like it. I love not worrying about when the wind's blowing out here. Julian's okay and Ricky's okay. It's really easy for the foliage to grow through the fence, even though mine isn't one of them that have the giant square holes in it. This was on sale at Walmart, so I grabbed it. Easy, a pair of wire cutters, snip, 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 and I've got a square big enough for my hand to go through. So if you haven't done it, definitely try it. Wasn't my idea, like I said. It's somebody I watch on YouTube, and you probably have too if you're into peppers, Pepper Guru. So I'll give him credit because I watched him for about a year before I tried it, and I'm glad I did. Now I know there are a lot of ways to support and stake up plants. Leave me a message down in the comments letting me know what your favorite is or what's worked best for you, or even maybe what's your least expensive. Mine's about $1 a 6-foot pole if you do it this way. But I also know that not everybody can do that. If it's your first year growing, then you don't have the option of the sunflower stake either. But plant a bunch of sunflowers and you'll have free stakes for next year. This is by no way, shape, or form all of the methods. There's weave methods, but they don't really work as well on peppers unless you're growing them in a big long row. I'm trying to specifically show you what I do with all my peppers. But if you have any suggestions for me out there on things that you really liked or that changed your life or anything like that, let me know, because I'm always looking for the next best thing. Now, I get the question all the time, what's the best way to go if I'm just starting out? For the majority of people out there, a 15-gallon polymer barrel that you get from Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, any of those places, and a good quality tomato cage is going to be the best way to go. It's going to handle almost all your peppers. You may have to put a little support, a little stick in when they're young until their branches reach that first ring on the tomato cage, but that's okay. It works nonetheless. So now that we've made it through what's the best cage, what do you tie it with? The options are actually endless, but most of you will probably start with the twisty ties. Be real careful with the twisty ties. Go around them a couple times. Make it a little bit thicker because it can cut into that plant if the plant starts weighing on it. But it is an effective way to do it. A better way to do it if you're going to go that route is pipe cleaners. They're softer, they have a protective coating, and they tend to work really good for me too. Another way you can do it is your zip tie. Zip tie works really well, and most of us have a bunch of them laying around. If you can see it up here, you can go ghetto in a pinch. In the military, we called this 550 cord. It's parachute cord, paracord, anything you want to talk about. A lot of us use it in the survival situations and in our bug out bags and stuff like that, but it's very versatile in the garden too. Or you can just use twine if you have that laying around. Just about anything will work. My wife finally got me this, and it's a tool that's made for strapping up plants. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Am I sponsored? No way. I'd like to be. But it makes it really easy. There's a spool in here. They ship it with everything. This one's called the tape tool. But if this is the branch, you very simply go around, squeeze, and it staples it on the end, and you have a nice band around it. And then when you're done at the end of the season, when you're pulling everything, you just pitch it and you start over. It also comes with probably a lifetime of tape and a lifetime of staples, and it actually is really easy to use. So if you look at buying one and you can leave the seller a message, tell them the Chili Prepper sent you and to check me out on YouTube. That's going to do it for this episode of the Chili Prepper. Always remember, you don't have to be a prepper to be prepared, and I'll see you on the next one.